Yeah, let's bring in Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, I want your full opinions on what the 11 o'clock advisory looks like, noting that the first sentence in the advisory is saying Gabrielle could further strengthen as it passes east of Bermuda.
Yeah, the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center is that it will be a Category 4 as it passes by Bermuda later on tonight and then heads on out to sea. There are no kind of data updates until we get the hurricane hunter in there, and that's going to be in a few hours. So that pressure change really based on the satellite analysis of it, and that's related to what they're seeing and also the size of the storm and kind of an average of what storms like that would be doing. So we're waiting on that hurricane hunter, but in any case, there's high confidence that the worst of this is going to miss Bermuda. All right, lookouts there, over there right now. There's Gabrielle, of course, and here we have two systems, and this one is especially of note because its development area kind of gets up in here where we all live, and we're going to look at that in some detail here coming up. But let's take a look at what's going on with Gabrielle. There you see, as Michael and Marissa showed you, 120 miles per hour at 955 millibars. Okay, and you see it kind of wobbling around here, but these are the estimates from satellite, and as it's forming, very often it wobbles, so there you go. Here's Bermuda over here. There's the hurricane. Boy, it's very impressive looking. Indeed, looking at that, the Hurricane Center noted that might be another eye wall forming out there, which would tend to slow the strengthening but spread out the storm some. So Bermuda's going to know what's out there because they'll get some fringy winds, but they'll also get the swells. Look at this. These are the estimated wave heights. Now, there's the core right there, but these are emanating out, and notice Bermuda's kind of blocking it up in here, and they're also reaching the East Coast, North Carolina north today into tomorrow, and by late tomorrow they'll start to let up, but for a few days, noticeable energy in the ocean from North Carolina north up to include Atlantic Canada, so just bear that in mind if you're thinking about going to the beach. All right, there's the cone as it heads on off. Really, the only threat is out here in the Azores. They're going to have to watch. All right, let's get to these disturbances now. This is the easternmost one, the red one of those two. Remember, there was a red one and the left one was an orange one. So what's going on with this one? Well, first of all, look at the clouds all kind of blowing this way, those higher clouds. Well, that's loosely related to Gabrielle. The wind coming out of Gabrielle is a long tail on that, and it's kind of tearing at this. Also, it's a very large system, but it's embedded in all this dust out here. You can see how big that system is. So that has to get clear of the dust before anything's going to happen with it. So the Hurricane Center is saying, okay, what's going to happen is Gabrielle up here is going to exit the picture. So the upper level winds will become more conducive for development, and it clears the dust. So here's the development area here. And the forecast, the high consensus is this is going to kind of follow Gabrielle. And again, Bermuda is going to have to watch this about next weekend, but no apparent threat except for Bermuda from this one. At least that's the thinking right now. All right, here's the other one. Now, this one's a little different story. This one is really being blasted by the winds coming out of the top of Gabrielle, coming this way. And so that's keeping this one kind of tame for now. But remember, Gabrielle is exiting the picture. So what's going to happen with this? There's the development area. Notice nothing with this right away here for the next few days. When it gets in the vicinity of the islands, there is a chance for some impact. In fact, likely at least a gusty moisture surge coming through the Northeast Caribbean islands, Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico, and then up into here. Now, what's going to happen with this? Boy, there's a lot of possibilities. The various computer forecasts are all over the place about this. Everything from a pretty strong storm to almost nothing at all except for that moisture surge going through the Caribbean islands. So let's take a look and see what we know. So we're going to look at the European model, and we have both of them. There's the red one to the right, and here's the one of more concern just because it's closer to us, and you can kind of make out it's just wave in the wind flow, and that's why they're called tropical waves. Just for generic purposes, we keep them as disturbances. But there's the moisture with that one. This one has more moisture with it and is also a bigger system. But let's go forward in time and watch the time up here. Here we are today. All right, we're moving to the middle of the week, and you see it going through the islands. Pretty good moisture surge there. And now we're all the way to Saturday, and you see it's in the vicinity of the Bahamas here. Hints of a circulation in the European model there. This one out here has more circulation with it. Now, we have all these variables going on. First of all, because it's weak, the question is how quickly does it sort of come together? The more it comes together, the more it's likely to lift to the north. If it stays weak, then it could come more southerly, take a more southerly track down here, and that would change a lot of things. Another variable is how strong does this one get? Because if this one gets strong and starts pumping out upper level winds that cover this area here, that could keep this one weak. They're not very far apart here. If this one takes longer to develop, then this one can operate more on its own. And again, the exact location is a toss-up at this point. Big zone here where this thing could be. And then we have this dip in the jet stream. Now, you've been talking a lot about this on Fox Weather because this is going to cause a lot of bad weather, from heavy rain, possibly some severe weather, flooding possible, thunderstorms, and so forth, and more rain in Florida. So Saturday, that's forecast, and there's a pretty high consensus that that's going to be there. So the question is, if this gets relatively strong, then this is going to get pulled north in some fashion by that dip. If it ends up down here, say, which is just, in the noise, then maybe that dip can't grab it if it's not very strong. And that dip is going to kind of move away, and it's going to reconfigure as we get past the weekend. So how the forward speed of this system, what happens over here, exactly where it is, exactly the configuration of that dip makes all these possibilities in the various models. So here on Fox Weather, we have this exclusive product. So this is the tropical threat product that looks at the European, the GFS, and the Google AI DeepMind model and says, what's the consensus of those three on what's going to happen to these systems? So first of all, Gabrielle, no question about it, that heads off out to sea. So no questions there. This one, notice nothing much, and then pretty large consensus that it's going to develop in this area and take a track similar to Gabrielle. So we have significant confidence with that one. This one, though, and then we have, look at the light blues here. Light blues are at the bottom of the scale up here. So what's it going to do? What's it going to do? And then we have some reasonable consensus that it's going to develop there. But that consensus is something of an average of all these different possibilities, and they range from down here to way up here. So this, even though that's where the average is, and normally we look at the consensus to get kind of the best odds, the highest odds of what's going to happen, but in this case, the spread on possibilities is so large that our confidence in that is low. And remember, we're talking about all the way out to the weekend here. Weak systems always are subject to errors in their forecasts, obviously, and the forecasts are likely to change. So Marissa and Michael, we're going to watch this because it's in our neighborhood, and obviously it is going to affect, with pretty high certainty, the northeastern Caribbean islands. And then what's going to happen at the end of the week? Is it going to be there, farther south? This is going to be a day-by-day thing. And, of course, we'll stay on top of it. Guys?
There's